artist and also a consultant and researcher. I'm not a technology expert, but I have a general familiarity and a close proximity to digital culture that's put me in various roles and conversations around arts and culture. I'm working on a book right now on what art knows, and Jess has asked me to share some quick thoughts on challenges that participants might want to consider around digital transformation, whether we're asking the right questions. Oh, and you saw earlier, the title of my talk is Adaptation and Resistance, but we're being very, very brief, so you're just gonna get some provocations, basically. So in response to Jess's provocations to me, I wanted to offer 3 thoughts. One, that we need to think more about collaborating versus competing. This is an area where we need to do more adaptation. 2, the point of the fund is to use the money in surprising ways to radically support art and artists. And 3, something that I haven't really seen happen, I don't think, is how can we use the fund, the Digital Fund at Canada Council, to challenge the way, to challenge our relationship to the technology. So I'm just gonna go back. Okay. So the Digital Fund at Canada Council is intended to fund collaborative projects, which is a term that gets thrown around a lot, and so I think there hasn't often been sufficient attention paid by applicants to this requirement. It's an $88 million fund that isn't meant to benefit the lucky few and help them advance ahead of everybody else, but instead it's, so rather than trying to raise the bar for everybody else, what we're trying to do is raise the floor for everyone. I said we, but I meant, I think that's what the fund is intended to do. So when you think about proposing a project for the Digital Fund, I think it's best to start with a systemic or sector-wide problem or issue, and then ask who are all the people who should be involved in devising a solution. Who is already working on a solution, and who has been excluded or left out of the conversation so far. How would the right mix of collaborators change the problem? Your objective with the Digital Fund shouldn't be to put your organization or an elite group of collaborators ahead of the curve. Again, you're trying to raise the floor for everybody. You really have to demonstrate how your project will genuinely bring others up with you beyond the circle of collaborators themselves. I also wanted to just briefly mention that in radically supporting art and artists, this is a fund for risk and innovation. I think that sometimes people have told me about their projects, and it's really stuff that's incremental improvement. It's stuff that, as a service organization or as an arts organization, it's something that you're eventually going to want to do down the line. And so what's a more radical position that you might take as a leader to improve things for maybe not everyone, but for many people? And then finally, the thing I actually want to talk about, using the fund to challenge our relationship to technology. So I don't think I've heard too many offers in this scope. I wasn't here yesterday, but I believe some broad and important challenges around the digital world have been raised, and a call was made for artists and arts-minded people to claim a seat around the table so as to influence conversations around governance, ethics, and so on. I wholeheartedly agree. I think arts workers will always play a role as advocates and activists, raising awareness, calling attention to issues, communicating perspectives that might otherwise be overlooked, rejected, or silenced. I think the arts sector also has a role to play in modeling the possible world we may want to live in. And when I say modeling, I don't even feel our examples necessarily need to work yet. When you think about even entertainment like Star Trek, the reason why we have cell phones today is because a bunch of artists, some sci-fi nerds, created these images, planted them in our minds of these devices that we could hold in our hands and would be able to do all these amazing things. And so I think that in many ways, I wonder what sorts of proposals we could come up with where it doesn't actually work, but if we just devise a project where it seems to work and we see the benefits of what if something could work this way, and then technology and technologists will like find a way to fill that gap and get us there. But as artists, we have to conceive of that future, that idealized world in the first place. In the CBC Massey lecture back in 1990, Ursula M. Franklin, in her collection of essays called The Real World of Technology, she talks about technology as a way of doing things. And in my book, What Art Knows, I argue that in a technology-obsessed culture, art is a technology for accessing perspectives that would otherwise be lost in a binary world of ones and zeros. Technology, writes Franklin, is a multifaceted entity. It includes activities as well as a body of knowledge, structures as well as the act of structuring. Technology is not the sum of the artifacts, of the wheels and gears, of the rails and electronic transmitters. Technology is a system. It entails far more than its individual components. Technology involves organization, procedures, symbols, new words, equations, and most of all, a mindset. Franklin then goes on to distinguish between what she calls prescriptive technology and holistic technologies. And prescriptive technologies basically are what you typically think of as Fordism or division of labor, where each worker has a very prescribed step that they are given to do, and they just repeat that one step over and over again. And so prescriptive technologies allow for this basically allow for managers to control creation, and it's about control and compliance. And so what prescriptive technologies do is that they produce a culture and a population that increasingly adopts as norm that compliance culture, believing that there's one way to do things. So I think that we would all agree that, actually I don't know if you would all agree, but I've been thinking a lot about how digital technology structures the world differently from the way that many artists structure or think about the world. Of course, the funny thing in there is digital artists, how do they think and all that, but we'll stay tuned for the book. What I'm suggesting here is that art is a holistic technology that involves its own modes of organization, procedures, symbols, language, abstractions, and mindsets. And I'm wondering, how can prescriptive technologies support holistic ones? And with AI and all these other brand new technologies and the evolution of tech, will we eventually get to the place where digital technology becomes holistic? I know I'm running out of time, so I just want to leave this quote with you. Wendell Berry writes, "We know enough of our own history by now to be aware that people exploit what they have merely concluded to be of value, but they defend what they love." And I feel like in today's context, the word defend is a little bit it's a little touchy. Defend has, being defensive is not a great position, but I'd like to suggest, as a provocation, that we might conclude that digital technology is valuable, but it's the arts and artists that we love. I think we often think of digital technology as something we have to learn to use, that we have to become good at using. And I'd like to submit to you that the artistic mindset, that art as holistic technology, is something we need to infect or infiltrate the digital world with. Or less nefariously, what might an intercultural relationship between the artistic mindset and the digital mindset look like when it comes to running an arts service organization? Thank you.